Hey everybody, it's Charles from HumbleMechanic.com and it's time for another White Wookie update. So here we are in front of the GTI, and if you watched the last update video, you may say to yourself, Charles, why are you working backwards? This is less stuff on than your last update video. Well, there's actually a good reason, positive reason for that. When we do these kind of builds, we do them in stages, and we do a lot of test fitment, trial and error, massaging of components for proper fitment. And all that gets done before, obviously, the final assembly. So in the last video, you saw the radiator on, the core support on, and everything in this area covered up. Well, now I had taken all of that stuff off in order to start putting the finishing touches on everything behind it. You'll notice here there is a line. This line right here goes to the brake vacuum booster. This needs a clamp. I actually made this line out of a combination of the old brake booster vacuum hose as well as just some plain old vacuum line. I also have an empty vacuum fitting here that needs to be plugged and here that needs to be plugged as well. This one will probably be the one that gets the fitting for the boost gauge. So rather than it being a frustrating part of the build where we're taking stuff back off, this is an exciting one because the next time these all go on, that's it. They are on. So when we go and put all the coolant hoses, I'm gonna make sure I clamp them, align them properly, and they will be installed for their permanent installation, their permanent home. I'm pumped about that. Throttle body still has to come back off. I need to clean it before the radiator goes on. I'll take the lines off the compressor, put new seals on it, and get that all ready to go, as well as get new seals on the small fittings that go to the condenser. A couple of bigger updates. Exhaust is on, minus the exhaust tip. The exhaust that I bought is actually used from a Jetta of the same vintage. And while the exhaust fits, the tailpipe is a little ridiculous. Although, if it didn't hit the bumper, part of me really wants to leave it on, but I'm sure I would walk into it 1,000 times and end up busting my shin open. This is the stage where, we're doing our final assembly of components as well as tying up the million little ends that a project like this has. So I had went through, I tightened down all the suspension components to make sure that the car is going to be safe to drive. I didn't set camber, I didn't set toe just yet because, well, of course we're going to be putting the NGP coilovers on it. So there's no reason to get really excited about making sure all of that stuff is proper and properly torqued. It's tight where I'm comfortable driving the vehicle. Besides the bolts that are in there now, especially the bolts at the knuckle that hold the strut assembly on, those are gonna get replaced anyway. So I'm going to replace them when we do the coilovers because I think that's really, really good practice. When it comes to the exhaust, I'm running the test pipe from 42 Draft Design. They were super cool. I called them up, had them change a couple of things about the way the exhaust comes just when you order it straight off their website. Had it extended a little bit for that 2.5 inch all the way back. So downpipe back is all a 2.5 inch exhaust. I do need to tighten up the downpipe out of the turbocharger, but that's something that'll just take a couple of minutes and it will be complete. The exhaust minus the tip will be complete. I installed the oxygen sensor as well. I am going to be ordering a wideband O2 setup, and luckily the way the bung for the O2 is in the test pipe and in the downpipe, that'll be perfect fitment for both the oxygen sensor, the front oxygen sensor, as well as the wideband that's going to go to the gauge. So that worked out really, really well. I have pretty much dialed in the installation of the intercooler. I showed you guys in the last video the new intercooler that I bought, as well as the intercooler piping. The only issue I'm really running into is the piping running on the passenger side sort of needs to be routed around the receiver dryer for the AC system. Yes, I could delete the AC system, and no, I'm not going to. I like to have air conditioning and it gets hot here in the summertime, which is why we're also going to be replacing the seals on the compressor. So this is actually not a huge deal. I may have to either remake this bracket or change this around just a little bit, which allows me to move that around in a pretty significant way and give me room to find a new home for it. It feels like there is still, even with all those things wrapped up, a million little details that need to be taken care of. Some are ultra minor, like simply putting on the serpentine belt and bleeding the slave cylinder for the clutch. The only major thing that I need to work out really is the installation of the diverter valve. And honestly, I can start the car and I can run it without the diverter valve in it at all. because when it's sitting either off idle in the driveway, or what I'll probably do is bring the idle up and rev it up a little bit, 1500, 1800, 2000-ish RPM for that first initial handful of minutes, I don't need to worry about the diverter valve. We're not building boost at that point, so there's really no need at all for a diverter valve. But of course, I need to get that worked out before we start driving the car. I had ordered 2 fittings from siliconeintake-hoses.com, and this is a good piece of advice, my friends. Do not order car parts when you can't sleep at 3 in the morning, because I ordered wrong, not 1, but 2 different pipes. I got them, I'm like, what the heck? And I went back and yeah, this one's on me, right? I can't blame the kit for that. This one's all on me, so no blame there. But I did actually order a 3rd one, and it said it in the description, and so I'm gonna take about 85% of the blame on this. It's supposed to be a 1-inch outside diameter pipe. It actually comes in right at 1 1/4, so I think I might just stretch the hose over it and put it on and run with it anyway. They do make reducers to go from 1 1/4 inches down to 1 inch, but that's yet another thing I'll have to buy. So I think I'm just gonna run it the way it is and just, massage that hose right on, and I think it'll be okay. Still have to go get a new battery. I still have to get some clamps for these fittings right here. I also got the fuel lines completely sorted out. I could not be more happy with the way this all worked out. I searched and searched and searched for the right AN to NPT fitting. According to the internet world, it didn't exist. I rode up to the speed shop up the road. They said you could get it in 90, but not 180. And of course, the hour or so after I bought it, yet another quick search, and I found it right away. So now what happens is the fuel feed comes up underneath the intake manifold, does a 180 and goes into the fuel rail, and then down the fuel rail and out to the fuel pressure regulator side. So I'm pumped. You don't really see at all the fuel feed line other than the 180, and I think that looks really, really cool. Minus that, tying up all the loose ends, filling it with fluids, coolant, brake fluid for the clutch slave cylinder, and power steering fluid, and topping off the oil, of course, we're pretty much ready to fire, knocking on the door, ready to fire. Of course, like I mentioned, throttle body needs to be cleaned. Some of the intake piping does need to be permanently sorted before I fire it up, but as far as engine goes, we're really, really close. The unfortunate part is when this video comes out over the next week and a half or so, I will be traveling, so that's gonna put me significantly behind as far as getting it done. If I didn't have anything else going on, we'd probably be looking at, early in the week firing it up, but it's going to actually be delayed a whole nother week. So thank you guys for bearing with me on that. We're so close. The wheels are gonna go on, the piping's all gonna get sorted. I'm gonna push it out into the driveway, and we're gonna fire this bad boy up and hope, I'll ask for your hopeage, cross our fingers, and hope this girl starts up right away. I did do a couple of other things that I'm just now thinking of. I broke out my multimeter just to sort of go through it. I was checking the grounds to make sure that the grounds weren't bad. Now there's a difference between not bad and good. The proper way to check a ground circuit is going to be dynamically. So we're gonna be looking at it like with the vehicle running, and we're gonna do a volt drop test. If we're not in a position to drive the car, run the car, we have to rely on a resistance test, and that will show us if we have a significant problem in the circuit. Luckily, everything checked out. My grounds seem to be good. I'll end up adding some inside down the road, but for right now, I think everything is good. I also proved out that wiring diagram circuit for the cooling fans, which means it's simply just a matter of cutting and splicing a couple wires, adding 2 connectors, which I already have, and getting that dialed in. When it comes to the fan wiring, I'm gonna make a video on this because I have not found any good information or anybody doing it the way that I'm doing it. And from everything that I've done, if you're trying to maintain the vehicle stock but add electric fans, this is far and away the easiest, the cheapest, the most reliable, and the least likely for problems way to do it. I'm not adding 100 relays to it or anything like that. I'm using all the stock components, simply adding 2 connectors to replace this one right here, a couple of splices, and that is it. So it should go on pretty smooth. No issues that I can foresee. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up. Thank you so much for hanging with me. It's been a long journey, a long road. We're knocking on the door, firing it up. Once it's fired up, I'm gonna drive it down to Apex Tuning, and there's a gal that's gonna come up and actually make proper intercooler piping for me so we don't have to have 100 little silicone adapters. After that, we'll worry about the exhaust tips. From there, then we'll start doing the rest of our modifications. Things like suspension, brakes, all that kind of stuff. Wheels and tires we'll probably do at that point as well. I'm gonna run the stock wheels and tires till we get all the alignment stuff straightened out. If you guys have questions, comments, you know what to do. If you like the video, thumbs up, always appreciate that. If you are listening on the podcast version, head over to iTunes and leave a review. Really appreciate that. That does help with the way iTunes pushes podcasts out to the community. Don't forget, if you want exclusive content as well as discounts to places like Black Forest Industries, which has been a huge supporter of this build, Eurowise, MT Knives, S&P Automotive, Adams Polishes, and more, check out the crew membership program. There is a link down in the description. You can also throw some support to the show on Patreon, as well as using my Amazon link. That one's awesome because it costs you nothing extra. Mash the link, buy what you're gonna buy anyway, and I get a little bit of credit for what you guys buy, whether it's automotive related or not. You can follow me, more excitingly, this project, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, Snapchat. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.